What happens throughout custody battles? What can you deal with shared expenses after a divorce? There's tons of questions about family law. To answer them, we have Hillary Hux here. She's an attorney and family law specialist, and she's here to answer your questions. So this is how you get them to us. All you have to do is text questions to 336-379-5775. Again, text, do not call. Hillary, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get right into it and ask some questions about family law. So these are kind of some scenarios. Can I refuse to allow visitation if I'm not receiving child support?
No. The answer depends a little bit on whether or not you have a custody order. I would never advise you to do that even if you don't have a custody order. But if you have a custody order saying that your ex is required to get certain visitation, then you should absolutely follow it, regardless of what the child support scenario is. In the case where you don't have a custody order, it's a little bit more ambiguous. There's nothing requiring you to grant that visitation, but I still wouldn't say it's a good idea.
Okay, next question. Can my child decide which parent he or she wants to live with? I know this is a tough one.
Yeah, and the answer on that, it depends. The court is going to take that into consideration if the court is making a decision about child custody. It is probably going to be more important depending on the age of the child, but it's never going to be the exclusive factor that the court is going to consider.
I know that can be really tough for parents going back and forth. We've all had, family members that have dealt with that. So the next question is, how can I take advantage of mediation and arbitration, and maybe kind of explain what those are for people that are not familiar?
Yeah, absolutely. So those are both really great alternative dispute resolution tools. With mediation, that's going to be required in a number of circumstances with family law. So for example, with custody, when you file a custody action, you are required to go to both a mediation orientation session and a mediation session. Those mediators are provided by the court system at no cost to litigants. You're also required to attend mediation in property division cases. That's a little bit different because in that circumstance, the parties have to privately hire their mediator. The difference between mediation and arbitration is typically arbitration is binding. In other words, at the end of the proceeding, that arbitrator is going to make a decision for you if you can't come to one on your own. Your mediator is going to facilitate a conversation, maybe put some pressure on both of the parties, play devil's advocate, but ultimately it's up to the parents whether or not they come to a resolution in a custody case, up to the spouses whether they come to a resolution in a property division case. Your arbitrator, on the other hand, they're going to make the ultimate call.
Okay, great way to explain all of that. So say someone moves out, can they be sued for abandonment?
Kind of. Abandonment plays a lot smaller of a role than most people think. It does come into play in that it's a form of marital misconduct that can affect a court's decision as it relates to alimony or as it relates to a divorce from bed and board. But there's almost always many factors that are going to go into the dissolution of the marriage, and I don't usually find that abandonment is something that's dispositive.
And what about this? Can my spouse get my retirement or pension if we get divorced?
Yes. So in North Carolina, when we look at property division, we're looking at all assets and debts that were accrued between the time the couple got married and the time they separated. So a lot of people say, oh, well, that's my retirement account. Yeah, but you put money into it during the marriage, at least a portion of it is going to be considered a marital asset, and then it's going to be up for division in equitable distribution, which is that division of assets and debts at the conclusion of a marriage.
And really quickly, say people have, or a couple has 50-50 custody, no one owes child support, right?
Wrong. That's a really common question. It depends on their incomes and some other factors like the cost of health insurance, any extraordinary expenses. But yeah, just because it's 50-50, there could still be some child support owed.
Okay, good to answer that. We are going to continue answering questions, and your questions, if you text them to us, 336-379-5775. We'll be right back.